Here we are. Hello, everybody. It's me, Gina from AetherFlows podcast. And with me today is Susan-Lynn. She is a person on YouTube that I've watched many of her videos, and she was recommended to me by some of the other people that I interview. And I was like, of course. Like she seems so fun to talk to and like a very interesting person. So I got a hold of her, cold called her on the emails, and she responded and said she would love to talk. So here we are, Susan-Lynn. I'll just let you introduce yourself. How do you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Gina, for having me on your channel, on your podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm a psychic
Absolutely.
medium. The spirit guides called me a spirit navigator, but I've been called a lot of things, and most of them are correct. Some of them probably not. But yeah, I think I'm most known for speaking with my spirit guides or having a pretty good, easy communication with my spirit guides. And I would like to say that I've gotten a reputation for arguing with my spirit guides, which I don't
Oh,
think is what I came
yeah.
here to do in this life. If I had to guess, I would probably say my Akashic records don't say, yeah, she's going to argue with her spirit guides. That's just what happened. When you're living a human life, which is very restricted, right? If you think about it, right? We have society, we have laws, we have gravity is one of our laws, but we also have just societal norms and laws. And when you're getting guidance from your spirit guides that's maybe 50 steps ahead of where you are now, it's really hard to say, wow,
Mm,
how can that happen? Right? Like, I can't do that. So I think
absolutely.
that's one of the things I model for people. Hopefully, not the arguing part, but the part that, spirit's gonna, give you some pretty far out there suggestions or guidance. And, how can you oblige them? How
Mm,
can you sort of step into that flow and allow something that's so maybe outside of your own idea or your own thinking. I can't do that, right? I could never do that.
mm.
So I think that's it's inspiration, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a great topic, actually. Maybe we should dive into that a little bit more because that is definitely something that I've been dealing with. My teams and guides told me that I am, well, first off, I was to start a YouTube channel and I was very argumentative about that, very stubborn. I didn't want to be seen, I didn't want to be heard. I felt like I had nothing to offer, all of that shadow. And so after working through that, I started the channel and it's been super fun and it was great advice from my guides. But now they want me to start a healing business, which is something that obviously I have no experience in. I've never done anything like that before. And so all of that shadow, all of that, I can't do that. I'm not good enough to do that. How am I supposed to do that? All of that's bubbling up. And so I feel like probably a lot of people are dealing with that right now. Everyone's in flux. Everyone's thinking about changing their careers or just like the fact that they're not happy where they are. So I think like listening to those nudges is so important. But I would like to start with like, how did your journey start? Because, you have like a successful business and a channel and you're helping all of these people, but I'm sure it wasn't like that, years ago. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Sure, you bet. So I think it's fascinating because you're so right. We're in this place in our evolution. And honestly, I'm channeling now. They're kind of
Mm.
always with me, except for when I really need them to be. But anyway, we're in this evolution, right? Where we're becoming more psychic, where we're becoming more intuitive. So for me, the funny thing about it is that I could see ghosts as a child, and that is no prize, right? Like because your family's like, "You're crazy," or "It's fine." You know what I mean? You don't get a lot of support.
Yep.
So, I didn't feel like any of this was any special thing. I actually thought that it was a burden. And
Mhm.
so when I got to be, my 30s, I moved to a very kind of older historic town that comes preloaded with ghosts, right? So then I became kind of, like popular for I could tell you your ghost's name, or I could tell you what your ghost is doing without me even knowing you. I could walk up to a stranger, and I kind of became like a party trick, honestly. But it was
Mm.
fine because it wasn't a big deal. So the funny thing is that that was whatever. So I was actually a photographer, a professional photographer for 22
Oh,
years.
wow.
And
That's awesome.
and I loved it. And that's what I did. And I didn't have any plans to do anything different. And this is what we're talking about, right? When spirit has other plans, when spirit's like, okay, you did what you were supposed to do, that was good. But you said that you wanted to switch gears or step more fully into this expression of your soul. Like for you, you're like, I'm supposed to be a healer. And so that became more aware for you. Like you started to get that message. And you get messages through other people. Like even when I was a photographer, especially when I was a photographer, people would say, Susan, please teach us how to be a photographer. Because I had a way of explaining complicated technical. This was back when we didn't have digital cameras and you had to really set all the settings. There wasn't even automatic mode, it's like, so
Mm.
people were like, please teach us. So even back then, people kept saying, become a teacher. But the last thing I wanted to do was become a teacher. So I would even hire somebody to teach my clients because I couldn't accept that I was a teacher. I just, I took all that familial, societal, whatever, my upbringing, and I allowed that to temper or change who I was supposed to be. I gave it too much
Wow.
power over my life. So when Spirit said, "Hey, we're going to send all these people to Susan to get her to teach," Susan said, "No, I can't. I can't possibly teach. I don't know anything. I'm not that person, right?" The other weird thing was when I had a challenge. Now, you guys, we grow through challenges, right? Like when your life is on autopilot and nothing much is happening, that's cool, but you're not really growing. Well, I had a
Right.
challenge. I had a big hurricane hit my town, and my photography studio had 7 feet of water in it, and
Oh
I
my
lost
gosh.
everything. And
Oh,
I
man.
and I really think that was Spirit's first time of saying, maybe you should reconsider this photography thing, but not me. I'm like, I'm going to put this round peg in this square hole because I'm going to make it happen. Right. So I
Yep.
doubled down on reopening my photography business, which was a challenge. And in that challenge, I had to level up, right? Like I had to work harder to open up my photography business. I had to do all the things. So I hired a business coach, and I really worked really hard. Well, part of that was I expanded my business. I actually made my photography business bigger, which is funny because Spirit was probably like, she's going the wrong direction. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
the funny thing is, people kept saying, teach classes. The next thing they said was, you should be on the stage at your convention. I'm like, have you lost your mind? I mean,
Your
are
convention.
you smoking something right now? Like, that's
Mhm.
illegal in this state. Like I was like, y'all are crazy. I would go to my convention and people would say, Susan, you should be up there teaching us. Right? And I kept getting the same message. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. You've gotten it. You've gotten your message. I promise you, from other people. Maybe somebody said, you're so good with numbers. You should be an accountant. And you're like, I'm terrible with numbers. We don't see ourselves the way other people see us. And that is a gift. So how other people loved my ghost connection abilities, but I didn't think it was special. Other people thought that I was a teacher, but I didn't think I was, right? So you go through adversity. So after I brought my business back, well, the next adversity is, the pandemic. And but even before the pandemic, I was starting to do readings because spirit starts moving you towards the goal. They start putting things in your path. They start putting people in your path to encourage you. All of a sudden, you have an interest in books. Now, the other thing I want to tell you guys is you'll have a spiritual awakening many times. It's not just one. It actually happens many times during your life. Like I was one of the kids in high school that would go to the library and be in the occult section. I didn't know why.
Me too.
I just found myself there interested in anything having to do with that topic. That was an awakening. And then I put it on the shelf and I became a photographer. Then it came back and then I put it on the shelf. So allow yourself, right, to kind of understand that it's not a straight line, that humans are, like a river. We double back, we go over here for some reason, we go over there, and none of that is judged, right? I would just say that when it's really time, when it's like, okay, you've meandered, you've done your thing, and now it's really time for you to step into this role, they'll turn up the heat. And for me, how they got me out of photography was I started having what I indelicately call psychic diarrhea. So I have the camera and I can't, I've got the camera in front of my face and I'm bantering, trying to
Mm,
get this high school senior to relax or whatever. And I say, "Oh, you look like somebody who's going into the service. I wonder if you're going into the military." And through the lens, I see these little eyeballs getting, like huge. And I
mm,
realized I have said something psychic, and I didn't realize that I had said it. I didn't mean to say it. I could not have known. Just met this kid 30 minutes ago, and they're freaking out. They're like, "How do you know? My parents don't know. Did the coach tell you?" And I would just play it off and say, "Yeah, the coach told me," or whatever. I just try to. So they'll put you in awkward situations that cause you to have to deal with the situation, and then grow, right? So that's kind of how. So I started doing readings, and then people came into my life that encouraged me instead of like disparaging me. People came into my life that really, really encouraged me, and then told their friends, "Hey, Susan can bring in your dad that just crossed over last year," right? Like, so
mm.
that's kind of loosely kind of how it all happens, right? It's sometimes through adversity. And to talk to your spirit guides, I tell you guys, people say, "Well, why is it that a lot of people that are spiritual people, how come they've had like these, like the diagnosis, like sometimes it seems like people that are very spiritual have had a near death experience, right?" Well, it's because you ask for help. So
Mm,
when you ask for help, that's when you get help. So adversity, right? You don't have to have, I mean, you could go through a bad breakup. Like for me, I went through a really bad breakup that caused me to question my sanity, right? It caused me to question my own, like, "God, Susan, I thought you had it better. I thought you had it together," right? Like, what's up?
mm,
And I started talking to myself and raising my own vibration because I knew that I was self-critical, and I knew that I just knew that I wanted to get better and be better. And when you raise your vibration, you're closer connection to your spirit guides. So they can start connecting with you, right? So that's kind of how it all went down.
wow. That's so man, that's a lot. Well, first off, I didn't know you were a photographer. That I love the medium of photography, and I didn't really have when I was in high school, I was very artsy and I was into sculpture and painting, and for some reason I was like, "Oh, photography, oh, piece of cake. All you do is aim a box and click." But it is so much more complicated than that, especially when you're using like professional equipment. And so, and the composition and lighting, like there's so much to it. So I have respect for that. That's a great art to have. And yeah, and honestly, you're so right. Like when you ask for help from the universe, you can't judge how it comes in, which I have done time and time
You
again.
can
I have
judge. You can,
yeah, you can, but
but
it doesn't
you're
work
going to
for you.
receive the
It
message
works
better if you're open-minded. Yeah.
right. That see, I just judged again. I said you can't judge. Don't judge the judger. So, yeah, you just have like it work. I'll just say it like that. It works so much better for you if you're just open to however it happens. And yeah, I mean, I've gone through exactly the same thing. I was a cook for, a chef, kitchen manager, whatever you want to call it, for over 20 years. And I was so attached to that role. That's all I want. That's all I thought I was. I thought I was just a food machine, like that's what I did. And my favorite part of it was like when you get into the zone and you're in this moving meditation and you're in this like flow with a group of people, and it's like effortless and it's all muscle memory, and then by the time you know it, 2 hours has gone by and you're like, where was I? And it was like you were in the flow. That's where you were, and I loved that feeling. And I wasn't into spirituality at all. I thought it was all kind of a joke at that time. And my body started falling apart, like my spine started getting weird, and like I got really bad carpal tunnel, and I would get surgery, and just and I would get migraines, like all of these signals from the universe, from myself, from my teams, telling me this is not, you're not in alignment with this. Like this isn't for you. But I just barreled through, just kept on doing it. And I was so angry and just like felt trapped, and I had given away all of my power. And yeah, I would say the pandemic really was actually a gift for me because it gave me time to assess and to kind of analyze and be like, girl, you are 43 years old and you've been angry your entire life. We got to do something about this, like we got to figure out what we want to do. And yeah, listening to your guides is definitely, it's a practice, because like you said, you never know how stuff is going to come in. And so I think it's, yeah. Anyway, I just went into a big rant. So there.
No, that wasn't a rant at all. I never thought I that was a beautiful glimpse into behind in the kitchen where you're
Mm,
saying it's almost like an orchestra, right? Like
oh, yeah.
everybody's
I still miss
connecting in
it.
a puzzle. And I love that. And in a way,
Mm,
that was I feel like you offloaded stress. Like that was your way
mhm.
of being in the ether, right? Of
Yeah.
the and they wanted to take that away from you. And I think so maybe for you it was like I have to learn the flow all over again, and this
Right.
is this is how I want the flow to be, and this feels so deep in my soul.
Mm.
um so it's like learning to walk again almost, right? Like,
Yeah,
so that would have been a really challenging situation to have to manage.
but I managed it. I did it. I passed the test. So yeah, like you said, awakening happens in stages. It's not just like, I mean, maybe for some people it's some huge kundalini awakening and then you're just like, boom, here I am, floating on a lotus flower. But for me anyway, it was in many stages. And like when I was a kid too, I was very open, and I had, beings coming into my room and teaching me how to fly around the house and all sorts of stuff. But then I had some family trauma, which kind of shut everything down. And I kind of just repressed everything. And I still had such an intense interest in spirituality. Well, it was more like it it manifested as the paranormal. Like I was really into like Sasquatch and UFOs and ghosts, ley lines, all that sort of stuff. And I think that's kind of where the spirituality kind of was channeled into this interest. But other than that, I was like, nope, there's no God, there's nothing. When you die, that's it. And then, through this series of like physical challenges and emotional challenges, it does kind of help you to open up to God, to spirituality, and to admit that you're not in control of everything, you know?
That's such a challenging statement, isn't it?
I know,
Because,
I know.
because we are, right? Like I have a serious addiction to chocolate. Like I didn't buy
Oh,
myself
I love
chocolate for
chocolate.
Easter, and I was last night, I went to like the dollar store and bought like chocolate, and that's all I bought, right? Like, and the woman's
Yeah,
like, I'm like, "Hey, don't judge," right? So
exactly.
but so I do have control, right? I could eat super healthy. Um, and And yet at the same time, I don't have control. There's this, what I've been struggling with is duality. Like, I think
Mm,
if anybody's gone through any sort of trauma in their childhood or their life, they don't like duality. They want things to be safe, right?
exactly.
We just want people to be who they are. We don't want them to turn into somebody else, or can I trust you or not? And so I struggle with duality. And we are in a land right now where I think all humans are learning duality. Like, this person is trustworthy, maybe in this scenario, you know, maybe you can trust them with your car, but you can't give them $100. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
isn't that weird? Like, wait a minute,
yeah.
how can I trust them with my car? They always bring it back. They didn't clean it, but if I gave them $100, they would go off the rails, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's like a higher level of understanding that we're kind of learning about and dealing with right now, of discernment.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, even so, I've been doing a lot of like inner child work lately, getting into touch with different parts, parts work, where I've discovered that, like, when you have childhood trauma or trauma of any kind, you can have a little soul fractal that kind of just breaks off and is, just out there, like, nope, that situation wasn't safe. I'm out of here, And so I'm learning more about that, and also communicating with my body, like, because your body has a consciousness. It's not just a meat suit, you know what I mean? It's like it's part of you, and so it listens. And so I'm doing all of this incredible communication with myself, and the more that I open up to that, the more I realized that, like, I had a little 6-year-old that was just hanging out, like, feeling like everything wasn't safe, and I couldn't trust anyone because, A, B, and C happened when they've, broke off. And so it was really hard for me to trust people in certain situations. Like you said, like, for instance, like, with emotional intimacy, like, having you can have really good friendships but not feel comfortable going to that place with people. And I mean, for me, I've discovered that's kind of why. It's because these parts of you don't feel safe. And so I feel like that's a big part of it too, is to bring yourself into coherence, and to remember that you've always been whole. But I think it's kind of a process of, like, remembering yourself and getting to
Mm,
know yourself again, all the different parts, and not judging them, which is
yes. And
hard because judging is like second nature. I mean, it's for me anyway.
it is
So
for me
it's,
too.
yeah, a lot of,
And
so when you talk
that's so,
about do I, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead, duality.
Oh yeah, when you talk about duality, it's like, I sensitive people, especially like, people who, when they were kids, they had a lot of, like, family stuff go on, like chaos or, whatever, lack of safety. They crave that kind of, like, utopia, and, like, and they look at society and they're like, "Oh, this stuff is all messed up, and it could be so great. Like, why can't people just get along?" And it's like, well, that's not really how the universe works. It's all about duality, and we have to learn how to work with that. Like you said, if everything's great, you don't learn, I mean, maybe you do, but not as much, not as accelerated as when some challenge comes up.
Yeah. You
So,
have to be uncomfortable. That's another thing too, right? Like, what area in your life could you be uncomfortable, but manageably uncomfortable, right? So I think when we're learning, for a lot of us, maybe some of you guys are like, I'm all in, like, I jump in head first, feet first, don't care, belly flop, and I love it. And that's great. So your lesson would probably be slowing down
mm,
and seeing what you're jumping into, right? That so everybody has got something to learn from being uncomfortable. Maybe for that person, the uncomfortable part is waiting. Is like just
yes.
waiting and saying, "Should I do this?" You know, if you're the kind of person that jumps in, then you're then your uncomfortableness would be waiting. For me, it's over like analyzing. Like I've got this
Mhm.
Virgo action going, right? So I'm like, I don't know. I need to read every review. I need to, whatever. So then that uncomfortable for me would be acting without thinking or acting without researching. So find out where you're uncomfortable. And then that's where you have a growth opportunity. And you don't have to, if you're uncomfortable jumping in, you don't have to jump in, but you can say to yourself, okay, this makes me uncomfortable. That's the first step, right? Just acknowledging it. Because, like you said, in our
Mhm.
body, when we don't acknowledge it in our head, it gets stored in our body.
Absolutely.
And then it can become a problem later if it manifests in the physical realm, right? So, um, but find out where you're uncomfortable and just talk to yourself gently. Like you said, I think this is so important what you said about talking to your 6-year-old. Go back to that version of you that is feeling, traumatized, and just ask them, what do you want to say? Like when I did that for mine, one of my versions of myself, I told it, I'll never forget this. I said, we made it. Look, like, we made it. Like,
Yep.
I'm 59. We made it. And this version of me was like, I don't want to hear that we made it. Like basically bugger off. I want you to hear what happened. I
Oh,
want you to
yeah.
acknowledge. I want you to hear it. Don't just gloss over
Yeah.
it and tell me I made it, because that's what everybody was doing to me at that time, was just saying, you're fine, right? So that part of me just wanted to say the grievances. And you
Mhm.
guys doing that work will unlock so many of the blocks that you have that are hidden, that maybe are keeping you from being successful or enjoying more money or listening to your spirit guides, whatever. Those hidden blocks, this is where you find them, is like she said, inside.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was really good advice to just listen to them. Even if you don't hear anything, just pause and just like sometimes you'll get a feeling like pain
Yes.
or anger or something like that. And just that process will release so much stagnant junk in your body. Like I did one with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, in inner child healing. She specializes in that stuff. And we went back and dealt with some trauma that I had experienced when I was a kid. And afterwards, I felt my entire left side, the whole left side of my body, just kind of like almost like dump out and clear out, like all the way from like my temple down, all the way down my hip. There was a huge amount of junk in my hip, and I just felt it all kind of energetically kind of just dissipate. And it was like, whoa, I had been carrying all of that for 40 some years,
Right.
and I've been going to like chiropractors and like, oh, my hip hurts, my hip. And it's like, actually, it's a
Wow.
lot of it's emotional, you know?
Are you familiar with Louise Hay?
I've heard, I've heard of her.
So she has, you guys that are watching, please Google Louise Hay, because first of
Mm.
all, her life story will blow your mind. Because
Oh,
she
okay.
didn't become like, she started Hay House, which is a
Yeah.
huge publishing house. And she didn't even start it, I think, till she was later in life. But she has a book that actually tells you like what your hip represents, what your
Oh,
bladder
okay.
represents, what your shoulder represents. And it would be fascinating, because I'm in an Airbnb. I don't have my books, but it would be fascinating to see what your hip, especially your left hip, what that represents, because that would give you a clue as to exactly what was stored there. So when you
Right.
guys have like a neck ache or your fingers hurt, you can even Google Louise Hay hip,
Mhm.
you know, diagnosis, whatever. It'll even come up on Google. But your left side sometimes is considered your feminine side. It's
Yep.
considered your receiving side. So
Exactly.
that could be something going on there. But I know your hip, I don't know if it's stabilizing, if you're stable. I don't remember, but that would be
Well, I know.
fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I totally want to get that lady's material. I actually have a really good friend who she was the manager of a building. that one of the residents that she lived in the building with worked for Hay House. Hay House, is that what it's called?
Hay House, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so she's the one who told me about it. I didn't know the woman wrote a bunch of books about body stuff though.
Her I'm
But
telling you, her story is fascinating. She
I'll totally
has,
check it out.
truly, the kind of story you could write a movie about, with abuse and, just she overcame so much.
Mm.
And she became popular during the HIV crisis in the 80s,
Oh.
because she started talking to gay men who were losing, their lovers, their friends, like, every day. And
Hmm.
she started this thing called mirror work. And my guides talk about it all the time. And basically, you're looking in a mirror, you're looking at your own eyeballs, and you're saying, I love
Mhm.
you. And
Yeah,
it's really powerful. It's if you wanna
it
change your
is.
life, that is a
Yeah.
very simple, effective way. Look at the mirror and say, "I'm abundant. I'm worthy of money. I'm worthy of
Mhm.
love. I'm worthy of respect. I love myself," right? Just say those things to yourself, because what you're doing is you're rewriting all of whatever happened in your childhood. You're erasing it and then putting in new, scripts. It's really, really powerful.
Absolutely. I've been doing it for, I don't know, maybe a little bit over a year. Um,
Nice.
but when I first started, holy cow, it was like I felt all itchy, like scratchy on the inside, and I felt uncomfortable, and I felt like a little anger pop up when I started saying I love you. Just look yourself in the eye and say I love you. Like you're fantastic, whatever it is you want to say. But like I was so uncomfortable just saying that about myself. And then which says a lot, like I feel like in our society we're taught that self-love is selfish. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're just full of yourself. You're being selfish if you spend any time on yourself. And so it's a lot of stuff to rewrite, but after a while I would say it every day, and then after a while I kind of felt this like excitement kind of bubble up, like, yeah, I am pretty cool, and it's a process. It takes a while, but like you'll notice that your insides change and your outside. It's a
And it's
really cool
free. You
practice,
guys, you can
and
just
it's
do
free.
it. You can do it
Yep.
in the morning, and it will change your life. Would you say that it changed your life?
Absolutely. I mean, it opened me up to acknowledging the fact that I did have a lot of like self-rejection, self-image problem issues. I won't say problems, but like a lot of self-confidence issues. And with that knowledge, it gave me, because I can't just sit with that. I have to figure it out. The monkey mind has to figure it out. So but yeah, it's been very helpful in realizing that I even had these things in the first place. And then like I said, the more you work with it, you do kind of curate this feeling of self-appreciation, of self-love, and just like being gentle to yourself, you know? Like being vulnerable with yourself in the mirror and being like, "Look, you are an amazing person." It is very powerful, I'd say.
Do you feel like it increased your abilities? Do you feel like you became more intuitive, or you
I feel well, my main clair, I guess, is clairsentience. Like I kind of feel energy kind of physically. So the more I cleared out, the more like
Mm,
programs and stuff that I was able to rewrite, and the more density I would clear out from like energy stored in literally in the body, in the fascia, in the muscles, in the bone, in the blood. I just had more room for the light. So I feel like it really did help.
that is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you were using the techniques, but you weren't familiar with Louise Hay herself. I really feel like you're gonna love this woman. She is a
Oh
badass.
yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely check her out. I love reading I love biographies, especially of like people who have overcome uh challenges. I mean, that's always a great story. That's kind of part of the format of this channel, actually. I just love reaching out to people who I've seen who are just incredible in my perspective, and having that conversation, kind of like learning their story of like how did all of this happen for you, because you're like you have all of this cool stuff that's going on. And so, that's what I've always kind of wanted to do, interviews. Like I just love having really good conversations.
I love that. We need that, and I love that you mentioned about these autobiographies of overcoming adversity, because I
Mm,
think that we're missing that in our society. If you go back 5 generations, we had the elders, and the elders would remind us, well, there was this drought, or there was this, money, or there was this pestilence or pandemic, and
mm,
this is how we got through it. And that was kind of knowledge, ancestral knowledge that got passed down. And now we've sort of gotten kind of vacuous, right? Like we
yeah.
don't honor anything. We just simply want to be entertained or work. And I think that's where we are now. Where we are now is like, wait a minute, we need help. How do we deal with this dissonance? How do we deal with this adversity? And I think what
Mhm.
you suggested is brilliant, because if you go to read even sports stars, it's interesting to me when you think about it, and I'm not really into sports, but when you think about it, big professional quarterbacks or basketball players or soccer players, they miss way more than they actually make
Mm,
shots. And I think that we don't think about that. We just think that every shot they take is going to be the one. But
mm,
in reality, you have to do a lot. You have to really put yourself out there. You have to really take the chances, and then understand the reality of the situation is you might be successful 1 out of 5 times. And I think our society, especially right now, and especially in the business world, and especially with men, is grind it out. Have you
yeah.
ever heard that? We're just going to grind it out, And my
Or just
guys want
push
to
through
talk
it.
about
Push
that
through all
a
the
lot lately.
emotions. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to say flow it out. Forget grinding. Grinding is actually working against the flow. Like if you're trying to swim against a current, maybe you're going the wrong direction. Maybe you should
Mhm.
just float with the current and see what perspective
Yeah.
that brings you.
Right. Yeah, it's so much easier, and you use so much less, of your
Energy.
life essence, your energy, when you go with the flow. And but yeah, like you said, I mean, especially with men, men are just taught from birth that, you have to be tough, you can't express your emotions. And you look around, and so many men around, I think it was my wife told me she read some article about how men who are 50 and older are like so much more likely to just drop dead of a heart attack or something like that. And intuitively, when she told me that, I was like, "Ugh, it's because they're repressing all of their emotions." You know? It just it's so damaging physically, emotionally, mentally, when you're taught to repress at least 50% of your emotions your whole life. Like, how ugh, that's awful. I feel bad, you know?
Yeah.
I'm the opposite. I'll cry at commercials. And last night, I don't know why I'm talking about this, but I had this weird thing happen to me last night, where I was watching a show that we had watched the first season of, and I had loved it, and that was about a year ago or something. And it was kind of a scary show, but I was okay with that. Like, I was still kind of in that mode at the time, where I was like, "Oh, I can watch this. It's fine. It's okay." But we watched an episode last night, and my body just like erupted in panic, and in fear, and like I felt it so much more intensely just from watching some TV show. I had to ask my wife. I was like, I have to turn this off." And I like started hyperventilating, and I started crying a little bit because it was so disturbing. And I asked my body what it was, and it was my kids. My children, my inner children were scared. They were like, I'm not safe. This is not safe. We can't do this." And so like with raising your vibration, it's also another level of awareness of yourself. And you have to like shift your awareness, and things that in the past were totally fine, you have to adapt sometimes. Like I can't watch scary stuff anymore. I get
I can't either.
I found
But
that out yesterday.
I think it's interesting that that happened in 1 year span.
Oh yeah.
So, I want to also acknowledge that in that year, you've gotten so clear with your body, you're
Mm,
honoring your body, you're honoring your cellular memory. And,
mm,
when your body was like panic, panic, you were like, okay, I honor you, right? I'm honoring that. So I think that's such a good point that you bring up, that as the spiritual evolution, you're going to respond to things differently. Like maybe
mhm.
you could watch those and now you can't. I could never watch them. Like my family wanted to watch them, so I had to watch them when I was a kid. But once I got to an age where I could choose, I could never watch them. To me, they're almost too real.
Yeah, that's exactly what it
Including,
was. I felt like I was being chased,
yes,
and it
it's
gave me
too
that
real
like,
for me. It's
yeah, I
way too
couldn't
real. And this is not
couldn't do it.
entertainment. This is not a movie. This is my life. Like that poltergeist just for real. Or, it's just like, no. And same thing with aliens too. Alien
Mm,
movies, I cannot. It triggers some past life
mm,
memory that obviously I haven't, and that's another thing, right? I don't feel safe. You didn't feel safe, so there's still a fear. There's your little inner child, whichever one or all of them, still got triggered by that. So there's still a little fear to let go of. But I think
yeah,
that when you experience that fear and you honor it, then they're honored. Then they don't
exactly.
have to trigger you in the future. You know what I mean? Like you
Mhm.
could actually just move through this and be able to watch it maybe in a year or 6 months. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I really think it is. I'm dedicated to kind of curating a friendship, like reparenting. That's what it is.
Yeah, reparenting.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so they have to, it's so weird talking about like different parts of yourself as if they're separate, but but it works. And yeah, I've learned so much just in the past couple of months. And so I feel like honoring these parts of myself helps me to foster trust within myself. That's the most important, to trust yourself, with your intuition. And I'll get these messages, a lot of the stuff comes that I recognize comes in from the exterior, like billboards or license plates, or what, like if somebody will call me and tell me something that I've been thinking about already. But like the internal stuff, when I get messages like voices or different, like clairaudience or clairvoyance or whatever, I do have a tendency to doubt it. So I feel like fostering a sense of trust within myself will really help me with my intuition,
I think that's
to trust the
human, right? I
messages.
mean,
Yeah.
it's a complicated situation we're in because, like they said earlier, there are laws, gravity, right? Like, and then you get this thing that's doesn't match up with your 3D reality, and you're like, wait a minute, where does this go? What
Mhm.
bucket does it go in? And because there's not a bucket for it to go in, your brain just says, well, that didn't mean anything, right? So then you forget it. So what I always tell people, I tell my students is write it down. If
Mm.
you'll have a journal, even if it's on your phone or wherever it's at, if you'll write it down, it will blow your mind because all those things that your brain forgot about are now in black and white. And you can page through it and be like, oh, snap, right? It
Oh,
really
yeah.
makes it all real. And
Okay.
and then you cannot deny it.
That'd be cool if you could write it down with like a date, and then
Oh, you
like,
do. Yes, you will.
yeah. And occasionally like go back and be like, oh my gosh, that totally happened.
It scares me, actually. Because I talk to my guides all the time, but it scares me because just the other day I was saying, you know what? I think I got this guidance about this thing, like 6 months ago. So I went and looked, and there it was. And the guidance that I got 6 months ago, I thought, oh, it means this. because that was
Mhm.
my awareness. That's how expansive I could be. Maybe my muscle only went this far. Well, 6 months later, I can understand it much more in an
Yeah.
expansive way. So not only did I get the lesson that 6 months ago I got this, but number 2, 6 months ago I understood it like this, but now I understand it like this. So that is basically working your soul muscle out, working out your intuitive muscles. But it'll blow your mind to go back through your journal. Because you'll be like, oh snap, they've been telling me this for 6 months and I haven't been listening. You know what I mean? Because your
Right.
brain is like, that don't make no sense. You got to write
Yeah.
it down.
Okay, I'll start writing it
And
down.
I'm not a
I've
journaler.
been What's that?
I'm not a journaler.
Me neither.
I've really, 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 really had to work for years. They've told me this. So it's, I get it. Some of us don't like to write things down. So just write down a keyword or weird dream. This happened, write down the
Okay.
date. And then you can always go back later and fill it in.
Okay. Okay, I will because I've had so many bizarre experiences that I've just kind of blown off and if I wrote them all down, I'd be able to like write a book because
Exactly. That's the
it's a
other thing.
lot.
That's the
Yeah,
other
for
thing, or a
sure.
blog post, or you would be able to
Mhm.
help people more. You know, what happened to me was I didn't remember. Like I just didn't remember all these things that happened. And then I would be with a group of friends and somebody would say, "Well, remember when you were doing this and you saw that?" And I'm like, I don't remember that. They're like, "You don't remember it?" Like to them, it was like such a big deal. So, I know that we get like psychic amnesia because our brain is like, does not compute, does not pay the
Right.
bills, whatever, doesn't fit, throw it out. So that's
Yeah.
why it's so important to write it down or to ask others, what do you know about my journey that I don't remember? That
Mm.
could be very fascinating because I promise you, they know things you have no memory of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I have some friends from, kindergarten, 2nd grade, not many, just a couple. And one of them has been watching the podcast, which is like, I don't know, it's part of that emotional intimacy stuff. And he's been like, I absolutely love this podcast. And I was kind of terrified to even tell him I had one because I had never told him that I had all of these like paranormal experiences when I was a kid. Like that was the one no topic. Like I could talk about anything else. I came out of the closet when I was like 14 to all of my friends. And like I was like a total weird kid when I was younger. But talking about the paranormal stuff was always like, it was like, nope, don't ever talk about that. And so now I'm talking about it and my friends are watching and I was so convinced that they would like, I don't know, abandon me, not want to be friends anymore, think I was too much or something like that. And everyone's been so supportive. It's yeah, so it's true. Like your version of yourself and who you are is so completely different from like other people's perspectives. And and yeah, when you're convinced that someone's going to reject you for something, most of the time that's a nudge to tell you that it's definitely something you should work through. Just do it. Just see if they'll see what the reaction is because for me I've noticed the more that I've opened my throat chakra and like made it a point to be more authentic and to speak my truth with people and to be more honest with everyone in my life including myself. It's that has been the most incredible change for me. Like I've physically noticed I have like more life essence. Like I feel more energetic. I feel the energy in my body more because I feel like I was kind of bottlenecked at the throat and it wasn't flowing and I wasn't happy because I wasn't I was being secretive, like you can't talk about this one subject. And it's like now it's starting to kind of I don't know, it's kind of starting to snowball and I'm like, "Oh, maybe I can be open and honest with everyone." Maybe people will like me for just who I am. It's it's definitely a different way of thinking.
And it's fascinating to me why some topics are taboo. Like for
Yeah.
you, coming out was not a problem, but
Yeah, it was
this
fine.
this other part was something that you held dear to your heart. You held it close because you
Mhm.
didn't want someone to criticize it. You didn't feel safe or comfortable. So that probably goes back to your childhood. I bet you in some way you said something or saw something. You might not have a memory of this at this time, but you you were belittled for it.
Mm.
And it's just very, very important to you. This is, like it's the people who are truly artists or truly musicians, and they never ever do it because they
Mm.
couldn't stand someone denigrating that very
Yeah.
important part of them. We hold the
Yeah.
most important thing close to our chest and we don't tell anybody about it. So it goes back to that being uncomfortable. But I would caution people, choose people that you really trust,
Oh, yeah.
not
Be
people
careful
that you
at
want to
first.
love you, because those people you want to love you, if you want someone to love you, that already tells me there's lack there. So go to the
Mhm.
people who check on you, the people who reach out to you, and ask those people. So you do have to be careful who you share the most vulnerable things with.
Yeah, yeah, of course. You can't just like, "I'm me, everyone," like, I mean, it would be great
You
if you
you
could,
can, but
but
you better be ready to you better be ready to not care. You just have to
right,
be to that point where I am me and I don't care anymore. So take me as I am or not. If you're ready for
yeah.
that, go for it.
Yeah, exactly. If for me, I felt like I had a very supportive base, like my wife is very supportive and my friends are it turns out they're all very supportive. It was just my own projections really that were kind of running the show. So, but yeah, I would say if you don't feel safe with your family, like on a conscious level, I would go slow. So, so yeah. So I think we should talk a little bit about your teaching. Like, what kind of stuff do you teach?
Oh my gosh. So that is probably the two things that are most surprising to me. If you were to say, like, looking back on your life, number one is that I'm psychic because because I knew I was a medium. I could see, my website is susanlynnmedium.com,
Mhm.
not Susan Lynn Psychic Medium. And I put my shingle out as a medium and I was like, okay, I'm a medium. And then when I was doing psychic readings, I was like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me I've been a psychic my whole life and I could have been psychic my whole life? So I was kind of mad, right? So it just goes to show you that you just don't know until you try it, right? So one of the things that I think that is my soul path in this lifetime is turning on people's lights, is helping them engage their own whatever it is, intuition, mediumship, whatever it is. Like, I teach people how to understand where they're, like you said, my clair, my psychic ability is this or that. You don't know. I promise you guys, you don't know until you try it, because there's no way for you to know, right? You don't know if you'd
Mhm.
like to eat something until you taste it. It's the same thing. So I tend to teach people those kinds of things. I teach people how to connect with their spirit guides. I teach people how to grow vibrationally, and basically whatever the spirit guides come up with, right? Like, so I've taught lots and lots and lots of classes. I also have an in-person event. This year will be my third one, called Connect to Empower, which has
Mm.
been also, like, when my guide said you're going to have a microphone and stand on a stage, I was like, I argued for 2 years, 2 whole years. So
Yeah.
now this will be, and I don't have the dates out yet. It's going to be late November, I think. But so yeah, I teach in that way. I feel like I try to inspire people, including people that like peers that I work with. I try to inspire them and I try to bring them, to have all of us on a team, so that's a lot of fun too. So yeah, those are all ways that I teach. I just, whatever is whatever tends to show up that my spirit guides are like, here's a topic we want you to talk about. I have wisdom on Wednesdays, right? This has
Oh,
been
what's
going
that?
on for years. I have over 120 videos. It every Wednesday it's a spiritual topic and it's completely channeled. And it
Hmm.
could be about ghosts, it could be about UFOs, or it could be about how does a dark soul, what happens to a dark soul? That was one of the most fascinating, in my opinion. Or it could
Ooh.
be how to raise your vibration, all those things, right? So I will say that because I also predict politics, my guides kept saying, and I finally did it. They said, start a new channel. So I started a new channel called Susan-Lynn Spiritual Way Shower. And all of
Okay.
my spiritual videos are over there now because if something happens to the channel is my main channel, which is Susan-Lynn Spirit Navigator, then I've got this other channel, right? So,
Okay.
um, so yeah, it's I channel, right? So I just try to be in resonance with whatever the energy they feel like is something that needs to be expressed.
Okay. Um, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about the political stuff. Not like political questions, but I've noticed within myself, so kind of when this incarnate of the awakening kind of came up with me was, I would say, 2019. And how that kind of happened was, well, I ended up starting to watch a lot of like Linda G, like a lot of the political tarot sort of stuff, because I was in a lot of fear. You know, things were not optimal, to say the least, for me. And I kind of was looking, I was looking for someone to kind of tell me that things were going to be okay. Like, which is okay. That's totally valid. There's nothing wrong with any part of anyone's experience. I just want that to be known. But I got really into the political tarot stuff, and I was watching multiple channels, and I was just like, "Oh, when's Trump going to get punished, and when's this?" And it kind of, I was really in that mode for a while, but then something changed within me, and I kind of lost interest in that. Not that like I don't know what happened. I kind of maybe just accepted that things are the way they are right now, and that the more important thing for me was to work on myself and to focus inward. um I felt like that was kind of my priority, and so I kind of lost interest with some of the political stuff, and I still watch a little bit of it, but I felt like that and watching the news, like this anticipation of like more bad news, and then looking for someone to tell me when's the light at the end of the tunnel gonna start. You know what I mean? Like I just felt like I was very like trying to control things, and I felt like the more I let go of that, I felt better within I had less anxiety. I had less anger towards people that I felt like were doing things that were not what I wanted them to do. And so I'm wondering, like, so you're starting a new channel that's focusing more on spiritual stuff, and Kim from Intuitive View is kind of, from what I've noticed, she's kind of moving more in just a spiritual direction, because I think for the same reasons. I don't think we're supposed to evolve. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts about that? About like the politics and focusing on the politics.
Well, I think you're in the right space. My guides have said to me, because this particular 5 months has been even worse, I think, than
I
anything.
know.
And the guides, when I would get wound up about the politics or the potential of all the horrible things that are happening, my guides would say, work on you. Work on you. Work on this class. Work on this. I launched so many things in the last 4 months, literally, because they kept saying, stop spinning out. Stop. You've got to work on you. This is something they said recently in one of the member things that I was doing. They said, start your own bonfire. When you
Oh.
light your own bonfire, that's when you light everybody else's bonfires. When we're running around with our little match and we're trying to go like this person and help that person and worry about this person and, oh, this, let me reach for this person, we're not really very effective, right?
Mm.
Because we just get this little match. When we light our own bonfire, we grow it and blow it up. Everybody's is going to catch fire too, right? Plus, we're going to be a beacon for everybody. So I think you're right on the money in the sense that this time is really and truly about you. Like,
Mm.
the guides say this even in my political videos. You still got to wake up and eat. You still got to wake up and go to the job, or you still have to wake up and pay your
Right.
bills. So let's make a better version of you that can do those things better. And look at what you've talked about. Like your physical container is now clear. Like you're processing energy so much better. Your life force is better. You're lighting your own bonfire, right?
Mm.
So that's what I would say. But there are tens of thousands of people that watch my political videos and they're not there yet. They can't let go
And
of
that's okay.
that anxiety, and that is okay, right? So for them, I show up and I try to read the the basic energy. Everybody has free will, but I find that as if the spirit guides keep telling you something for a long time, that pretty much means the energy is starting to set like concrete. Like in the beginning, you can mix it up, you can write your name in it, you can draw designs in it, but after a while it starts to harden. So that's one of the things. And I will say this too, right? And I've been fully transparent with this. I do the political videos to convert you to the spirituality, right? I tell them, you guys, I'm telling you this, but to survive this political stuff, you need to be watching these Wisdom on Wednesdays. That's what you need to be doing. They're free, right? Like
Oh,
this is
that's
free.
great.
But people have to be ready to do it. And fear
Mhm.
is such a strong motivator. And so I show up in the political videos to try to help them cope and to give them some hope or some tools or something. But I'm hoping to also encourage them to become more spiritual themselves.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I feel like that is it's very balanced, because you're not fully in I guess the trenches, like the yeah, that's the thing. You have to pay your bills. You still have to exist in this 3D realm. And there are things that are happening all around you that are not pleasant that like you have to be aware of this stuff because we are human and we exist on earth and that's the thing. But you can know that this stuff is happening, but you don't have to put all of your focus on it.
Because you're
I
going to
feel
lower
like
your
that is.
vibration. If you lower your
Yeah.
vibration, a bunch of things happen. One is it's harder for your spirit guides to communicate to you because they love you unconditionally. So if
Mm.
your vibration is down the dumps, it's just harder for them to reach you. And then if your vibration is down in the dumps, it actually creates more of this anxiety energy that those sort of darker energies feed off of, right? Now,
Yeah.
having said that, I want to say that nobody is ever going to always be on the spiritual high. And one of the things I think the guides shared, which I think is the most one of the best things they've ever shared, is live your life like an interesting song. An interesting song doesn't have dun 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 dun, you know what I mean? And the whole song is not like low or anxious. The whole song is, maybe boring, then maybe super high, then a trilling, and then drops, down. An interesting song has hooks, it has valleys, it has
Right.
highs. So we're all going to be all over the map, but that's good. What we don't want to do is flatline and just be roadkill. It's just be flattened by this energy. So find ways to celebrate because people are like, I can't celebrate. It's too depressing. You can celebrate. And I would point out Ukrainians. Go just watch any video. They're out there drinking their coffee. They're out there showing you the
Mm,
flowers. If a Ukrainian, if people that are literally being attacked can find some kind of beauty in their day, we can.
exactly. Exactly. I on Patreon, I'm a member of this animal rescue group that is based in the Ukraine, and they're just like, man, they are
Wow. See,
incredible. Yeah, in the middle of a war zone, they're out there,
I
scooping up
love
dogs and cats and
Ukrainians
stuff.
love animals. They love
I am
animals. That is a
Ukrainian.
culture that loves animals.
Yeah. My
And I
mom
love
on my
them for
mom's
that.
side, we're all Ukrainians. So,
Oh, are you? Okay, that's so
yeah.
it's interesting that they brought up Ukrainian. I already know if they're going to bring up something, it has a reason. Um, so yeah. So, it's about perspective, right? It's about
Yeah,
perspective and understanding too that we want to help. You want to help this organization in Ukraine help animals, right? That's what you've chosen. But you also realize that you've got to take good care of you. We don't
exactly.
just give everything over to this anxiety or this need. We have to honor and respect ourselves.
And that brings us back to self-love is not selfish. You have to kind
Right.
of protect your own energy, and when you siphon it off, feeling terrible about everything that happens in the world, like you said, you just have a tiny little match. You don't have the power to fuel yourself. So, yeah, I mean, that's a huge lesson. And of course, it doesn't happen overnight, but that's one of my pet projects is managing your own energy.
Mine too, and I think, maybe it's something you work on your whole life, right? None of
Oh,
these
yeah.
things are like snap, snap, it's done, it's like I feel like you just unlock a new level of, like,
Mhm.
okay, you're all excited because I learned this thing, and then spirit's like, okay, now you've unlocked level 10. You're like, oh, I got to start over again at number 1 on level 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I
so
yeah, it's like peeling the onion.
it's like peeling the onion. Yeah, being gentle with yourself and just it's a journey. It really is a journey. And you know what I do want to say because the guide said this. When I said light your bonfire, you know what another thing that's very prevalent is we don't want to be seen.
Mm,
So lighting your bonfire is like, look at me. And a lot of
yep.
us don't, and you mentioned this in the very beginning of our conversation, like being
Yep.
seen is really a thing. So you might not want to light your bonfire. You might feel safer taking that little match and going, "Hey, hey, let me help you," right? And that's okay too. I think the important thing is acknowledging. If you can acknowledge, I don't want to be seen. I want to do it over here this way. That's fine, but acknowledge it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the first step, right? Just even acknowledging that there's a little something brewing in there. That's the first step. And yeah, I mean for geez, that's a huge part of the journey that I'm going through is being seen. Like, I'm geez, I'm in my pajamas right now. I'm not wearing any makeup. I don't have all these ring lights or, like the touch up thing that they put on that sort of option. Like, I don't have any of that, and I am I was very, very uncomfortable when I started, but it's a process, and I'm getting more comfortable, and I'm starting to watch all of my videos, and which that
Mm.
was super painful in the beginning too. Watching your videos, watching yourself on video, and just like I couldn't get through 5 minutes. I was like, oh, I can't stand the way I look or I talk or whatever. And the more that I've been able to watch and actually write down a couple of points about some good qualities. Like what were some good points to
Right.
this video? It's like the more you do that, the more you can kind of, I guess, grow your self-confidence, grow your self-esteem. It doesn't have to be you don't have to dislike the way that you are and the way that you look forever. You can change it. So,
I love that. I love that you said watch yourself and point out some positive things, right? Because you're honoring yourself. You're saying,
mhm.
Oh, wow, Susan, I really like this, or I really like that. Or, I think that's so powerful. And I agree. And anybody that wants to do a YouTube channel, I would suggest just do it and hit publish and walk away. You know what I mean? Like just do that a few times. Just publish it and walk away.
Yeah.
Because if you micromanage it in the beginning, you will never do it. It will never take off. So I think for my first 10 videos, I just published them and walked out of the room and didn't look back. Um,
Mm.
and you can look at my first videos and you can see a difference in me and how comfortable I am, right? You really can. So, you know, none of us are going to be experts. It's always about growing.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfectionism is a big obstacle for some of us, myself
Me
included. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you feel that you're supposed to have a channel, just do it. And if you only have, 10 subscribers, who cares? That's 10 people that you're talking to. Like put 10
Right.
people in a room. That's a lot of that's a lot of humans, in one room that are like valuing what you have to say. And yeah, I do feel like the subscribers and all that stuff is kind of a trap for sure. But, it's that's another thing to be conscious of is I've definitely done that before too, where I'm like, oh, nobody's liking and subscribing, but it's like I'm doing this for myself. I'm not really, and for whoever values this information. Like that's another facet of it, but it's mainly for myself, my little throat chakra.
There you go. And then you're in
Yeah.
the flow. Then you're in the
Yeah.
flow, right? And then spirit takes care of it because you're doing the thing you're supposed to be doing or the thing that you wanted to do in this life, this
Yeah.
incarnation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's surprisingly fun. Like, I'm actually really enjoying this. So, I am so grateful that you, emailed me this morning and was like, "Hey, get the let out. Come on, let's do this."
No,
So
that is not what happened. Actually, I missed your email and you were like, "Hello," and then I didn't get that email and then I was like, "Hello." So I think what happened was spirit was like, Susan, let's get you two together, right?
Yes.
Again, the
Yes.
synchronicities, right? You're like,
Yeah,
I don't know if this is going to happen. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to happen because we missed each other, but we still did it because that it was supposed to happen.
exactly. So Spirit said, "Get the let out. Let's get this
Yeah, spirit
conversation
said, let's
rolling."
connect these two. Let's make sure that they do this because this is important.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how it feels.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I've felt so much energy coming in just listening to you. I feel like this conversation was as much for me as for everyone else. So
Me too.
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Susan Lynn. And with this, I will turn the recording off. But first, if anyone feels like liking and subscribing and or sending this video to friends, family, whoever, I encourage it because that's one of the points of the channel is to give people fun, cool, helpful information. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. And